The wedding was perfect. That was the cruelest part. White roses everywhere, hundreds of them, cascading down the altar like frozen waterfalls. My dress was custom-made, Italian silk, the kind of gown I dreamed about since I was 16 and first saw Nathan Sterling across a crowded room. 5 years of loving him, 8 years total of knowing him, and now he was finally mine. The music swelled. I walked down the aisle on my father's arm, and I couldn't stop smiling. Nathan was standing at the altar in his black tuxedo, his dark hair swept back, his gray eyes fixed on me with an intensity that made my heart race. He was still the most beautiful man I'd ever seen. I reached the altar. My father placed my hand in Nathan's. His palm was warm, steady, and he squeezed my fingers gently. I thought I saw his eyes glisten. "Sophie," he whispered, "you look perfect." I was so happy I could barely breathe. The officiant began the ceremony. I'd stopped listening to the words, too caught up in the moment, too focused on the man in front of me. The man I'd loved for 8 years, the man I'd chosen, the man who'd chosen me back. And then the church doors swung open. A little girl ran down the aisle. She was maybe 3 years old, with dark curls and wide blue eyes. She was wearing a white flower girl dress, the kind you bought at department stores, cheap and slightly too small. She was crying. "Daddy," she screamed. "Daddy, don't marry her. Mommy needs you. I need you." The music stopped. The guests turned. Murmurs rippled through the congregation like waves. I looked at Nathan. His face had gone pale, the blood draining from his cheeks. His hand was still holding mine, but I could feel his fingers starting to shake. "Sophie," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "I can explain." But he didn't explain. He just stood there, frozen, staring at the little girl who was running toward him. The girl reached the altar and threw herself at his legs. She wrapped her small arms around his knees and sobbed. "Daddy, please don't leave us. Please come home." Nathan's face crumpled. He dropped my hand. "Sophie, I'm sorry." His voice cracked. "I have to. She's my daughter. I didn't know. I swear to you. I didn't know until 3 years ago." She showed up on my doorstep with a DNA test, and I couldn't turn her away. I stared at him, the man I loved, the man I trusted with everything. "Nathan," I said slowly, "you have a daughter with someone else, and you never told me." "I was going to tell you." His voice was desperate, pleading. "I was going to tell you after the wedding. I wanted to fix it first. I wanted to make sure she was taken care of. I wanted to. You wanted to trap me first." My voice was ice. "You wanted to marry me before I found out." He opened his mouth to deny it, but the little girl was still crying, still clinging to him. "Daddy, please. Mommy said you were never coming back." Nathan looked down at his daughter, then back at me. I saw the war in his eyes, the choice he was about to make. "Sophie," he said, "I'm sorry." And then he let go of my hand. He picked up the little girl, settled her on his hip, and walked down the aisle. He didn't look back. Not once. I stood at the altar, alone, in my perfect white dress, surrounded by white roses and staring after the man who'd just left me for a child I'd never known existed. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I took off my veil, walked over to the officiant, and took the microphone from his trembling hand. "Nathan Sterling," I said into the mic. My voice echoed through the silent church. "If you take one more step toward that door, this wedding is over. I mean it." He paused. His shoulders stiffened. I saw him hesitate, just for a second. And then he kept walking. I lowered the microphone. The guests were staring at me with a mix of pity and shock. My mother was crying. My father looked like he wanted to kill someone. I smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of a woman who just realized she'd been played for a fool. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said, "thank you for coming. The reception is canceled. Please enjoy the leftovers." I walked off the altar, past the guests, past my family, and out the back door of the church. I didn't look back either. The ride home was a blur. I don't remember getting into the car. I don't remember driving. I just remember sitting in my apartment, still in my wedding dress, staring at the wall and replaying every moment. He'd made love to me 3 nights ago. He'd looked into my eyes and said he loved me. He'd promised to spend the rest of his life with me. And all along, he'd had a secret, a daughter, a whole family I'd never known about. I pulled out my phone and started searching, but I found her easily. Lily Wright, age 24, my former assistant. I'd hired her fresh out of college, trained her, mentored her. She'd been smart, eager, and I trusted her. 3 years ago, she'd resigned suddenly, said she'd found a better opportunity. I'd given her a glowing reference and never thought twice about it. Now I knew the truth. She'd been pregnant with Nathan's child, and she'd hidden it from me, just like he had. The next day, the tabloids had a field day. Billionaire bails on bride. Wedding disaster. Secret love child revealed. Sophie Grant humiliated at the altar. I didn't read them. I didn't have to. My phone was blowing up with calls from friends, family, and reporters. I turned it off. 3 days later, Nathan showed up at my apartment. He was a wreck. Dark circles under his eyes. The expensive suit he was wearing was wrinkled, untucked. He looked like he hadn't slept since he'd left me at the altar. Sophie, please let me explain. You had a child, I said. With my employee. You lied to me for 3 years. There's nothing to explain. She was just a mistake, he said. A single night before we were serious. She left, disappeared, and I thought it was over. I didn't find out about the baby until she showed up on my doorstep with the DNA test. 3 years ago, I said. You've known for 3 years. And you never told me. You let me plan a wedding. You let me stand at an altar. You let me humiliate myself in front of everyone I know. I was going to tell you. His voice was breaking. I was going to tell you after the wedding, once I'd figured out the custody stuff. I wanted to fix it first so you wouldn't be burdened. So, you could trap me first. I laughed. A hollow sound. So, I'd be legally bound to you before I found out. He opened his mouth to argue, but I held up my hand. I want you to leave, Nathan. I want you to go back to your daughter and your girlfriend and your secret family. And I never want to see you again. Sophie, leave. He left, and I sat on my couch, still in the sweatpants I'd worn for 3 days, and I let myself cry for the first time. I didn't hear from him for 6 months. Then a mutual friend told me Nathan was getting remarried to Lily, the mother of his child. They were building a life together, the 3 of them, a family. I found his address, the house he'd bought for them, the big house in the best neighborhood. I drove past it one day and saw them in the front yard. Nathan was pushing his daughter on a swing. Lily was laughing, her hand on his shoulder. They looked happy. They looked like a perfect family. I thought about everything he'd taken from me, the years I'd wasted, the trust I'd given, the future I'd planned. But I didn't go in. I didn't make a scene. I just drove away. I went back to work. I threw myself into my family's business. I told myself I was fine, that I was moving on, that I'd find someone else. But I didn't find anyone else. I couldn't trust anymore. Nathan had broken something inside me, something I didn't know how to fix. And then one day, I got a call from a man who'd just lost the love of his life. A man who'd been hurt just as badly as I had. A man who would change everything. I spent the next year rebuilding myself. Not my life. That had been easy. I'd moved into a new apartment, thrown myself into my family's business, and made more money than I'd ever made before. But rebuilding myself, that was harder. Every time I looked in the mirror, I saw the woman who'd stood at the altar in a perfect white dress, waiting for a man who'd never really been there. My mother kept calling, and my father kept sending business opportunities my way. My friends kept trying to set me up with eligible bachelors who were, apparently, supposed to make me forget about Nathan. I'm fine, I told them over and over. I'm moving on. I was lying. I wasn't moving on. I was surviving. There's a difference. The call came on a Tuesday. It was from a number I didn't recognize, which meant I almost didn't answer. But something made me pick up. Maybe it was the persistence of the caller. 3 rings, 4 rings, 5 rings. Most people would have given up by then. Sophie Grant. The voice was female, professional, with a slight edge of urgency. My name is Cassandra. I'm Nathan Sterling's attorney. I almost hung up. The last thing I needed was Nathan's lawyer calling me. Please, Cassandra said quickly, as if she knew what I was thinking. I'm not calling on his behalf. I'm calling because I've been looking at his financial records, and I found something you need to see. What kind of something? I can't tell you over the phone. Can we meet? I met Cassandra at a coffee shop in the financial district, the kind of place where everyone wore suits and stared at laptops. She was in her late 40s, sharp-eyed, and she didn't look like someone who'd ever been caught off guard. First, let me be clear, she said, sliding a folder across the table. This doesn't leave this room. If anyone finds out I gave this to you, I'll lose my license. I opened the folder. Inside were financial documents, bank statements, transfer records, receipts for payments I didn't recognize. What am I looking at? Your ex-fiancé has been making regular payments to a company called Greenway Holdings, Cassandra said. 6 figures a year. The company is registered in Delaware, but the beneficial owner is a woman named Lily Wright. Nathan's new wife, the mother of his child, the former assistant I'd hired and trusted. The payment started before she left the company, I said slowly, before she even got pregnant. Cassandra nodded. He was paying her before she was pregnant, before they were serious, before she was anything other than your assistant. I felt the blood drain from my face. He was paying her off. Not exactly, from what I can tell. He was putting her on the payroll, a quiet expense account. The kind of thing that looks like a consulting fee on paper, but doesn't have any actual consulting work attached to it. Why would he do that? I think he was setting up a safety net for her, Cassandra said. And then she got pregnant, and the safety net became something else. I sat there, staring at the documents, trying to piece together the timeline. Nathan and Lily had been involved before she got pregnant, before she left my company, while she was still working for me, while I was still trusting her with my schedule, my emails, my everything. She'd been sleeping with my fiancé while I was paying her salary. The betrayal was bigger than I'd imagined. IT wasn't just that he'd kept a secret. It was that he built the secret with someone I trusted, someone I'd mentored, someone who'd smiled in my face while she was taking everything from me. Your ex-fiancé isn't just a liar, Cassandra said. He's been hiding assets for years. Money he didn't declare to the IRS. Money that probably came from the company you and your family helped him build. I felt a cold anger settle into my bones. What do you mean, the company we helped him build? Cassandra met my eyes. His company's valuation dropped significantly after the IPO, but his personal wealth kept growing. That doesn't happen without some creative accounting. I went home that night and started digging. I pulled up the public filings for Nathan's company, looked at the revenue streams, the investment rounds, the acquisitions. I cross-referenced them with the payments to Greenway Holdings and found what I was looking for. Nathan had been siphoning money from his own company for years, moving it through shell companies and offshore accounts, keeping it hidden from investors and the IRS. He built an empire on borrowed trust, and he'd financed his secret family with stolen money. The numbers were staggering. Millions of dollars, enough to buy a house, pay for a child's education, and never worry about money again. And he'd done it all while pretending to be the honest, hardworking entrepreneur I'd fallen in love with. I waited 3 days before I confronted him. Not because I was afraid. I was done being afraid of Nathan Sterling, but because I wanted to be sure. I wanted to have every piece of the puzzle before I showed up at his door. When I finally did, it was a Sunday afternoon. I knew he'd be home. I knew Lily and the little girl would be there too. I didn't care. Nathan opened the door, and I saw the surprise flicker across his face. Sophie. His voice was guarded. What are you doing here? Did you really think I wouldn't find out? He stiffened. Find out what? About the payments. About Greenway Holdings. About the millions of dollars you've been hiding from the IRS and your investors. The color drained from his face. Sophie, I don't know what you're talking about. Don't lie to me. I stepped past him into the house. Not anymore did I know everything. The shell companies, the offshore accounts, the money you've been funneling to Lily for the past 4 years. It's all documented. Lily appeared in the doorway, her face pale, the little girl clinging to her hand. Sophie, please, she said. This is my daughter's home. You can't just. Your daughter's home, paid for with stolen money? I said. Your daughter's future, financed by fraud. And you knew where the money was coming from, and you didn't care. Lily's face crumpled. She looked at Nathan, her eyes pleading. Nathan stepped between us. Sophie, leave. Now. Or what? You'll call the police? I laughed. I think you should be more worried about who I'm going to call. Sophie. I'm not going to expose you, I said. That's not my style, but I am going to make sure you never do this to anyone else. I'm going to make sure your investors know where their money went. I'm going to make sure the IRS gets a copy of every document I have, and I'm going to make sure you spend the rest of your life paying for what you did. I turned and walked out of the house. Nathan called after me, but I didn't stop. I thought I'd feel vindicated. I thought I'd feel powerful, but all I felt was tired. I'd spent 8 years loving a man who'd never really existed. I'd built a future around a lie, and I'd come out the other side with nothing but evidence and a broken heart. My mother called that night. She didn't ask about Nathan. She didn't ask about the confrontation. She just said, your father and I have been thinking, maybe you should take some time off to travel. Get away from all of this. I can't, I said. I have to finish what I started. You don't have to finish anything, she said. You've already done enough. Let the lawyers handle it. Let the system handle it. You've got the rest of your life ahead of you. I thought about that. A life without Nathan. A life without the constant weight of what he'd done. A life where I could finally breathe. It sounded impossible, but it also sounded like the only thing that made sense. 2 weeks later, I got a call from the FBI. They'd been investigating Nathan for months, they told me. Financial irregularities, fraud, money laundering. My evidence was the final piece they needed. Sophie Grant, the agent said, I want to thank you. You've done a service not just to yourself, but to everyone who trusted Nathan Sterling. I didn't feel like I'd done a service. I felt like I'd done what I should have done years ago. Nathan was arrested a month later. I didn't go to the courthouse, and I didn't want to see his face. But I saw the news coverage, the photos, the headlines, the endless speculation about what would happen to his company, his family, his legacy. Lily and the little girl were interviewed on a local news station. Lily was crying, saying she'd had no idea that she'd been deceived, that she was just a single mother trying to do the right thing. I watched the interview and felt nothing. She'd known. She'd always known. And now she was trying to play the victim. The little girl looked tired. She looked confused. She looked like a child who'd been used as a pawn in a game she didn't understand. I thought about the moment she'd run down the aisle, screaming for her father. I thought about the way she'd thrown herself at his legs, the way she'd begged him not to leave. She hadn't known what she was doing. She'd just been a weapon in Lily's hands. I never got my happy ending. Not the one I'd planned, at least. I didn't find another man. I didn't get married. I didn't have children. But I found something else. I found peace. I traveled the world. I built a career that mattered. I helped other women who'd been betrayed by the people they trusted. I stopped waiting for someone to save me and started saving myself. And in the process, I learned something important. You don't need a happy ending. You just need an ending. A place where you can finally stop fighting and start living. I found that place, and it was enough. I didn't go to Nathan's trial. I'd spent enough time in courtrooms, enough time watching lawyers argue over the wreckage of my life. I knew what the outcome would be. The evidence was too strong, the paper trail too long. Nathan was going to prison, and Lily was going to lose everything she'd built on his stolen money. But the little girl, Emma, she was the one I couldn't stop thinking about. She was 5 years old now. She'd been 3 when she ran down the aisle, screaming for her father. She'd been a weapon then, a prop in Lily's game. But she was also just a child who'd been used and manipulated and taught to lie before she even knew what a lie was. I found myself driving past her school one afternoon. I told myself it was coincidence. I told myself I was just in the neighborhood, but I wasn't fooling anyone. She was playing in the yard, alone. The other children were in groups, laughing, chasing each other. Emma was sitting on a bench, her small legs dangling, staring at the ground. She looked so small, so lost. I parked the car and walked to the fence. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't have a plan. I just wanted to see her. A teacher noticed me and walked over. "Can I help you?" "I'm a friend of the family," I said. I just wanted to see how Emma was doing. The teacher's face clouded. "She's had a difficult time. Her mother." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "Her mother is going through some personal issues. Emma's been staying with her grandmother." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. 3 days later, Lily called me. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was the last shred of decency I had left. "Sophie, I need your help." Lily's voice was raw, stripped of its usual polish. "Emma's been asking about you. She saw you at the school. She wants to see you." "Lily, I don't think that's a good idea." "Please." The word cracked. She doesn't have anyone else. Her father is in prison. Her grandmother is too sick to take care of her. And she stopped. "I'm not going to be around much longer." "What do you mean?" "They're charging me with fraud. Nathan's lawyers are trying to pin everything on me. They're saying I knew about the embezzlement, that I was part of it. I could go to prison too." I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to tell her she deserved it. Part of me wanted to remind her that she'd played her part in destroying my life. But the sound of Emma's voice, the image of her alone on that bench, kept me silent. I met Emma at a playground the next weekend. Lily dropped her off and left without saying goodbye. Emma was dressed in a pink coat that was too small, her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. She sat on the swing, not moving, staring at the ground. I sat down on the swing next to her. "I remember you," she said quietly. "You were the lady at the church." I was. "My mommy said you were trying to take my daddy away from us." I took a breath. "Your mommy was wrong. Your daddy was already my fiancé. He'd promised to marry me, and I didn't know about you until that day." Emma was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "My mommy lies a lot." I blinked. "What?" "She says things that aren't true. She tells me to say things that aren't true. She told me to cry at the church and call out for daddy, even though I didn't want to." I felt something break inside me. "Emma, why are you telling me this?" "Because I don't want to lie anymore." She looked at me with her big blue eyes. "Will you be my friend?" I couldn't say no. I didn't say yes either, not exactly, but I started visiting her every weekend. Sometimes more. I took her to the park, to the movies, to get ice cream. I listened to her talk about her mother, her grandmother, her absent father. I watched her gradually come out of her shell. She was smart, fierce, funny, and she'd been hurt in ways she was only beginning to understand. Lily was sentenced to 6 months in prison for fraud. She'd been given a reduced sentence in exchange for testifying against Nathan. I didn't feel sorry for her. But I felt sorry for Emma, who was losing both her parents in the space of a year. I took Emma to visit Lily once. They sat across from each other in the visiting room, a thick pane of glass between them. Emma didn't cry. She just stared at her mother with an expression I couldn't read. "I'm sorry," Lily said. "I'm sorry for everything." Emma nodded. She didn't say anything else. I met Nathan's mother at the custody hearing. She was a cold woman with sharp eyes and expensive clothes. She'd never approved of me. Not when I was engaged to her son. Not when I was standing at the altar. Not when I was walking away. "Why are you doing this?" she demanded, pulling me aside. "Why are you involving yourself in my granddaughter's life?" "Because someone has to," I said. "She's lost everything. Her parents are in prison. Her grandmother is sick. And you." I looked at her. "You didn't even show up to the hearing." "She's not my concern." "Then she's mine." I became Emma's legal guardian. It wasn't a decision I made lightly. I never planned of children. I never wanted to be responsible for anyone but myself. But every time I looked at Emma, I saw myself. The child who'd been left behind, the woman who'd been betrayed, the person who'd been told she wasn't enough. I couldn't save myself from Nathan, but I could save her. The first night she stayed with me, she had a nightmare. I heard her crying from the guest room and walked in to find her huddled in the corner, her small body shaking. "Emma, it's okay. It's just a dream." She looked up at me, her eyes wide and terrified. "You're going to leave me too. Everyone leaves me." "I'm not leaving," I said. "I'm going to be here for as long as you need me." "Promise." I knelt down and took her hands. "I promise." She threw herself into my arms, and I held her tight. I'd never felt so afraid in my life, but I'd never felt more certain of anything. The months that followed were the hardest of my life. Emma was grieving. She was angry. She was withdrawn. Some days she wouldn't talk to me at all. Other days she'd scream and cry and throw things. I didn't give up. I kept showing up. I kept cooking her favorite meals, reading her bedtime stories, showing her that she mattered. And slowly, she started to heal. She started laughing again. She started making friends at school. She started talking about the future, about what she wanted to be when she grew up. She started trusting me. One night, after she'd fallen asleep, I found myself sitting on the couch, staring at the wall. I thought about everything I'd lost. Nathan, the wedding, the future I'd planned. I thought about everything I'd gained. Emma, the chance to be someone's safe place. The opportunity to break the cycle of betrayal and abandonment. I wasn't happy. Not exactly. But I was something close. Something that felt a lot like peace. I got a letter from Nathan 6 months into a sentence. He'd written it from prison, his handwriting shaky and desperate. He wanted me to know he was sorry. He wanted me to know he'd made a mistake. He wanted me to know he still loved me. I read the letter twice, then threw it in the trash. Nathan hadn't loved me. He'd loved what I could give him, and why money, and why connections, and why willingness to look the other way. And when it had been easier to let me go than to tell me the truth, he'd chosen the easy path. I'd stopped loving him a long time ago. I just hadn't admitted it to myself. 3 years later, Nathan was released on parole. He showed up at my door, dressed in a cheap suit, his face lined with age and regret. He looked older than I remembered, smaller. "Sophie, please, I need to see Emma. She doesn't want to see you. You can't keep her from me. She's my daughter." "She's my daughter now." I met his eyes. "She's been my daughter for 3 years. I've been the one taking her to school, making her dinner, staying up with her when she has nightmares. You haven't been there for her. You've never been there for her." He opened his mouth to argue, but I held up my hand. "You chose Lily. You chose yourself. You chose a life that didn't include me. And that's fine. That was your choice. But you don't get to come back now after everything and pretend you care." He stood there for a long moment, his face pale and drawn, and then he turned and walked away. I closed the door and went back to my life. Emma started high school last year. She's 14 now, smart and funny, and full of the kind of confidence I never had at her age. She has friends. She has hobbies. She has a future. She still writes to Nathan sometimes. She still remembers the good moments, the ones before everything fell apart. But she's also learned to separate who he is from who he could have been. "Were you ever going to love him back?" she asked me once. "If he hadn't done everything wrong?" I thought about it for a long time. "Yes," I said. "I loved him for years, but love isn't enough. It never is." I don't think about Nathan as much as I used to. I think about the life I've built instead, the career that fulfills me, the daughter who makes me laugh, the peace I've found in the space between who I was and who I've become. Sometimes I still think about the wedding, the white roses, the perfect dress, the moment I realized everything I believed was a lie. But I don't feel angry anymore. I don't feel sad. I feel grateful. Grateful for the pain that taught me to be stronger, and for the love that found me in the end. The custody battle lasted 18 months. Nathan's mother, Eleanor, had decided she wanted Emma after all. She'd hired the best lawyers, spent hundreds of thousands of dollars, and presented herself to the court as the grieving grandmother who'd been unfairly excluded from her granddaughter's life. I sat in the courtroom every day, watching her perform. She wore expensive suits and spoke in measured tones. She talked about family, about legacy, about the importance of blood ties. She made me look like an interloper, a stranger who'd inserted herself where she didn't belong. But I had something she didn't have. I had Emma's voice. Emma was 9 years old when she testified. She stood in the witness box, her small hands gripping the rail, and she told the judge the truth. My grandmother never visited me, not once. When my mom went to prison and my dad was arrested, she didn't come to see me. She didn't call. She didn't send a card. I was alone, and she didn't care. Eleanor's face went pale. Sophie was the one who came, Emma continued. She was the one who took me to school and made me dinner and held me when I cried. She's my family, not my grandmother. Sophie is my family. The courtroom was silent. I didn't cry. I promised myself I wouldn't cry, But I felt something shift inside me, something that had been broken for a long time, finally starting to heal. The judge ruled in my favor. Eleanor was denied custody. She was ordered to pay my legal fees. And Emma was officially placed in my care, with no restrictions and no conditions. Eleanor didn't appeal. She knew she'd lost. She knew she'd never win. I walked out of the courthouse with Emma's hand in mine, and I felt something I'd never felt before. Victory. Not the petty, vengeful kind. The kind that came from knowing I'd done the right thing. The kind that came from protecting someone who couldn't protect herself. A year later, I got a call from Nathan. He'd been released from prison early for good behavior. He'd found a job, a small apartment, a life that was far removed from the empire he'd once built. Sophie, I know I don't have the right to ask, he said, but can I see Emma? Just once. I want to apologize. I thought about it for a long time. Emma had asked about him occasionally in the quiet moments before bed. She didn't hate him. She didn't love him either. She just wondered. Let me ask her, I said. I didn't make the decision for her. I sat down with Emma and explained Nathan's request. I told her she didn't have to say yes. I told her I'd support whatever she decided. She was quiet for a long time, and then she said, I want to see him, but I want you to be there. I nodded. I'll be there. We met Nathan at a small cafe near his apartment. He looked different, older, thinner. The arrogance was gone, replaced by something softer, something that looked like regret. Emma, he said, his voice cracking, you've gotten so big. I'm 10 now, she said. You missed a lot of birthdays. He flinched. I know. I'm sorry. Sorry doesn't fix it. No, he said. It doesn't, but I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm just asking you to know that I'm trying to be better. Emma looked at him for a long moment. Then she said, I don't hate you. I used to, but I don't anymore. I just don't know you. Nathan nodded, his eyes wet. I understand. I have Sophie, Emma continued. She's my mom now. She's the one who stayed. She's the one who chose me. I know. He looked at me, and I saw something in his eyes I'd never seen before. Gratitude. Thank you, he said, for taking care of her, for being who she needed. I didn't say anything. There was nothing left to say. Nathan left the cafe first. Emma watched him go, her small face unreadable. Then she turned to me and said, Can we get ice cream? I laughed. Yes, we can get ice cream. We walked to the parlor down the street, and I watched her eat her chocolate cone, her laughter filling the air. She was okay. She was going to be okay. And so was I. The years passed. Emma grew up. She went to high school, then college. She became a teacher, the kind of teacher who remembered every student's name, who stayed late to help with homework, who believed in the power of second chances. She got married. I walked her down the aisle. There were white roses at her wedding, too, but they didn't remind me of the ones I'd left behind. They reminded me of new beginnings. She had a daughter, a little girl with dark curls and bright eyes, just like Emma had been. I held her in my arms and felt the weight of everything I'd lost and everything I'd found. I was a grandmother now. I'd never expected to be a grandmother. I never expected to have a family at all. But I built one anyway. Not the way I'd planned. Not with the man I'd loved, but with the girl who needed me and the love I'd found in the space between what was and what could be. The last time I saw Nathan was at a hospital. He was dying. Cancer. He'd been diagnosed 6 months earlier, and he'd chosen not to fight it. He'd called me, asked if I'd come, and I'd said yes. He was in a small room, surrounded by beeping machines and the smell of antiseptic. His face was gaunt, his skin pale, but his eyes were still the same. The same eyes I'd fallen in love with so many years ago. Sophie, he said, his voice weak. I know I don't deserve to ask, but I need to tell you something. What is it? I never stopped loving you. He reached for my hand. I know I made terrible choices, that I know I hurt you more than anyone should ever hurt someone, but you were the only one. The only one who ever mattered. I didn't pull away. I let him hold my hand. I let him say what he needed to say. I'm sorry, he said, for everything. For the lies, the secrets, the wedding, for not being the man you deserved. I looked at this man who'd been my everything, who'd broken me, who taught me what it meant to survive. I forgive you, I said, not because you deserve it, because I needed to. He smiled, a weak, tired smile. Thank you. Goodbye, Nathan. Goodbye, Sophie. I walked out of the hospital and didn't look back. The funeral was small. Nathan had asked to be buried next to Lily, who died of an overdose 2 years earlier. They'd never been happy together, but they'd been bound by something that was stronger than happiness. They'd been bound by the choices they'd made. I didn't go to the funeral. I didn't need to. Emma went. She stood at the grave with her husband and her daughter, and she said goodbye to the father she'd never really known. When she came back, she told me it was okay. He didn't know how to be a father, she said, but he tried. Sometimes. And that counts for something. I agreed. It did count for something, just not enough. I'm sitting in my garden now, watching the sun set. Emma and her family are inside, laughing and talking and filling the house with the kind of noise that used to drive me crazy. Now it's the only sound I want to hear. I think about everything I've been through, the wedding that never happened, the love that was never really there, the family I built from the ashes of everything I'd lost. I think about the girl who ran down the aisle, screaming for her father, the girl who became my daughter, the woman she became, the mother she is now. I think about the life I've lived, the pain, the loss, the betrayal, but also the joy, the love, the unexpected grace. And I realize that I'm not the same woman who stood at that altar. I'm someone else entirely, someone stronger, someone wiser, someone who's finally learned to let go. I close my eyes and let the peace settle over me. It was a good life, a hard life, a life full of struggle and failure and moments of unexpected grace. But it was mine, and I lived it on my own terms. I opened my eyes and looked at the sky, the colors melting into dusk. I smiled, just a little, because I'd done it. I'd built something that would outlast me, something that would matter long after I was gone, something that would make a difference in the lives of people I'd never meet. I walked back into the house, where my family was waiting,